My name is Rachel Miller, and for the longest time I thought I understood everything about being a mother. I raised my son, Daniel, mostly on my own since his father, and I divorced when Daniel was only 8 years old. Daniel is 17 now, tall like his dad, but he has my brown eyes and my stubbornness too. We live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio, the kind of place where neighbors wave at each other, lawns are neatly cut, and Friday night football is the biggest event in town. That evening had started like any other. It was a Friday, and Daniel had invited his best friend, Jason, to stay the night. Jason had been coming around our house for years. He was practically family. I still remembered when he was just a scrawny 10-year-old with messy blonde hair, trailing behind Daniel with a backpack that looked almost bigger than him. He'd eat dinner with us, sometimes spend weekends with us, and over the years, he'd become another son to me in a way. I made them pizza, the frozen kind because I had been working all day and didn't have the energy to cook something from scratch. I worked as a nurse at the local clinic, and by the time Friday rolled around, I was usually exhausted. The boys didn't mind. In fact, they were thrilled. Teenagers seemed to love pizza no matter how it came. The two of them sat at the table, laughing and joking, talking about school and basketball. Jason played point guard on the school team, while Daniel had joined as a forward. They'd been through wins and losses together, and I knew their bond was strong. After dinner, they retreated upstairs. I could hear them laughing through the thin walls of our house, probably playing video games or scrolling through funny videos. The sound made me smile. It was nice, comforting even, to know my son had such a good friend by his side. Around 11 p.m., I decided it was time to head to bed. But before I did, I wanted to check in on them. It's something I always did, even though Daniel was nearly an adult. Old habits die hard. I'd peek into his room, say goodnight, and remind him not to stay up too late. When I walked down the hallway, the soft yellow light from the lamp cast long shadows across the floor. I reached Daniel's door and noticed it was cracked open just a little. I could hear voices, low, serious tones now, so different from the loud laughter from earlier. I hesitated for a moment, not wanting to intrude. But then I thought, I'm his mom. What could be so serious? I gently pushed the door open. Hey, boys, I started, but I stopped mid-sentence. Daniel was sitting on the edge of his bed, looking down at the floor. His shoulders were tense, and I could see the emotion in his face even before he looked up. Jason, his best friend, was standing in front of him, his hands on Daniel's shoulders, almost as if steadying him. When they both turned to me, I felt my heart twist. Daniel's eyes were red, like he'd been holding back tears, and Jason looked nervous, caught in a moment that clearly wasn't meant for me to see. Mom, Daniel said quickly, brushing at his face. It's not what it looks like. I froze. I didn't know what it looked like, but I knew something was wrong. Jason stepped back, his hands falling to his sides. His voice was calm, but his eyes were full of worry. Mrs. Miller, Daniel's okay. We were just talking. But it wasn't just talking. I could feel it. Something heavier was happening in that room. I walked in slowly, my instincts pulling me closer to my son. Daniel, what's going on? Why are you upset? Daniel avoided my gaze. He kept staring at the floor like it might open up and swallow him whole. Finally, after a long pause, he whispered, I didn't want you to find out like this. My stomach tightened. Find out what? Jason glanced at Daniel, then back at me. For a moment, I thought he might explain, but instead he said softly, maybe you should tell her. I sat down beside my son, my hand gently touching his back. Daniel, whatever it is, you can tell me. You know that. He finally looked at me, his brown eyes glistening. And then he said words that changed everything. Mom, I think I'm depressed. The world seemed to stop. The clock on his nightstand ticked loudly in the silence. I hadn't expected that. Not in a million years. My Daniel, my happy, goofy boy who used to build Legos on the living room floor, who made silly faces at the dinner table, who always lit up when he played basketball. How could he be depressed? Jason spoke softly, filling the silence. He told me tonight, Mrs. Miller. He didn't want to tell you because he thought you'd be disappointed. Disappointed? I repeated, my voice breaking. Daniel, Sweetheart, why would I ever be disappointed in you? Tears spilled down his cheeks then, and I pulled him into my arms. He trembled against me, and I realized just how much he'd been holding inside. I don't know, he whispered. I didn't want to be a burden. You work so hard, Mom. I didn't want you to worry about me too. I squeezed him tighter. You could never be a burden. Not to me. You're my son. You're everything. Jason sat quietly, giving us space, but I noticed the way he stayed close, like he was silently promising he wouldn't let Daniel go through this alone. That was the moment that shocked me. Not because I caught them doing something wrong, but because I realized I had almost missed the signs. My son had been suffering right in front of me, and I hadn't seen it. And it was his best friend, Jason, who had been the one to stand by him, to encourage him to talk, to hold his shoulders steady when he felt like he was falling apart. I thought I was just saying goodnight. Instead, I walked into the most important conversation of our lives.